There comes a moment when the gentlest soul, the one who carried every burden in silence, refuses to carry one more ounce of weight, and in that moment, the world is forced to show its true face. We live in a world where kindness is often mistaken for weakness, where the heart that forgives endlessly is seen as an open door for abuse, betrayal, and deception. But let me tell you something. When the empath, the healer, the forgiver decides enough is enough, the earth shakes, masks crumble, pretenders are exposed, and the ones who thought they could hide behind charm, lies, and manipulation suddenly have nowhere to run. Stay with me, because what I am about to share is not just about forgiveness. It is about awakening, boundaries, and the power that rises when the quiet soul finally says, "No more." If you've ever been the one who gave too much, forgave too often, or loved beyond reason, this message is for you. The empath's gift is not something that can be taught in classrooms, nor can it be earned by wealth, nor discovered in the noise of ambition. It is something carried deep within the marrow of the soul, an inheritance of sensitivity, a rhythm in the heart that feels the world not only for itself, but for others. The empath is born seeing through different eyes, hearing through deeper ears, and touching the spirit of life in ways most cannot understand. They are the ones who walk into a room and immediately sense the heaviness or lightness of the air. They are the ones who hear the words unspoken, who notice the tremble in the smile, who recognize the ache behind the laughter. The empath carries a rare gift, the gift of compassion so profound it bends them toward others before themselves. Their instinct is to heal, to comfort, to hold. They can take another's brokenness into their own hands and cradle it as if it were their own child. And perhaps the most extraordinary part of this gift is that it requires no recognition, no applause, no repayment. The empath gives because giving is who they are. They love because loving is the only language their soul truly knows. But here lies the paradox. What makes the empath extraordinary is also what makes them vulnerable. The world, with all its noise and selfish appetites, does not always honor this gift. Too often, it takes and takes again. It drains the empath's compassion as though it were an endless well, never stopping to wonder if the well might one day run dry. People come to the empath not only for comfort, but for relief, for absolution, for forgiveness they did not earn and do not intend to live up to. They lean on the empath's softness, forgetting that softness does not mean weakness and gentleness does not mean naivety. Yet still the empath gives. They forgive when the world would not. They extend a hand when others would turn their backs. They stay when others walk away. This is the miracle of their spirit. This is the evidence of their divine heart. They do not count the cost of their kindness, nor do they calculate the return on their love. They love fully, wholly, completely, and in a world that teaches us to guard, to harden, to protect, the empath remains open. What greater bravery exists than the bravery of one who continues to feel in a world that tries daily to numb? The empath's gift is not only felt in personal relationships, but in every corner of human experience. They are the co-worker who notices when your spirit is low and slips an encouraging word on your desk. They are the friend who listens for hours, not because they have the time, but because they make the time. They are the stranger who pauses to help when others rush past. They are the heartbeat of humanity, reminding us that compassion is not extinct, that tenderness still walks the earth. But it must also be said, the gift is heavy. Imagine carrying the pain of your own life and the echoes of another's life within you. Imagine being unable to turn away from suffering, unable to close your eyes to injustice, unable to detach your heart from the cries of the world. For the empath, it is not a choice to feel, it is their nature. And though this nature is sacred, it is also exhausting. They walk through life absorbing currents of emotion that others throw away, catching the storms of people who never realize the weight of what they leave behind. And still they smile, still they forgive, still they choose love. It is a remarkable thing, really, to watch an empath at work in the quiet, unseen corners of life. You will not always notice them because they do not announce themselves. They do not demand attention. But if you pay close enough attention, you will see them, the ones who stand at the edge of the crowd holding up the weary, the ones who check on the lonely, the ones who never stop believing that gentleness can change the course of a moment, a day, or even a life. And here is the most astonishing truth about the empath's gift. It is transformative. When someone encounters an empath's love, something shifts. Even the hardest heart feels a crack of light. Even the most bitter spirit softens for a moment. Compassion is contagious, and when an empath offers it freely, it begins to ripple outward, reaching further than they will ever know. An act of forgiveness given in silence may save a soul from drowning in shame. A word of comfort whispered into a broken night may be the thread that keeps another from falling apart. The empath will never know the full measure of their impact, but it is vast, it is deep, it is unending, and yet the empath is often misunderstood. People mistake their kindness for foolishness, their patience for submission, their forgiveness for weakness. They assume that because the empath gives so freely, they have no limits, but nothing could be further from the truth. The empath's gift is not weakness, it is power. It is the power to remain soft in a hard world, the power to rise above cruelty with compassion, the power to respond to hatred with love. That kind of strength is not common. That kind of strength is divine. So when we speak of the empath's gift, we must honor it with reverence. We must understand the courage it takes to carry it, the strength it requires to sustain it, the resilience it demands in a world that often does not deserve it. For every empath you meet, know that you are standing in the presence of someone who has chosen, consciously or unconsciously, to bear a light that few are willing to carry. And in that light is the proof that goodness still survives, that love is still possible, that humanity still has a chance. The empath's gift is rare, it is beautiful, it is sacred. And though it is often overlooked, it is the quiet force holding this world together. Without them, without their compassion, their love, their forgiveness, the world would be far colder, far harsher, far emptier. Their gift is not just for themselves, it is for us all. Forgiveness is one of the greatest forces in the universe. It is the balm that heals wounds, the bridge that reconnects broken souls, the light that allows us to move forward when shadows threaten to consume us. To forgive is to release the chains of bitterness and to say, I will not let what you did poison who I am. Forgiveness is holy, forgiveness is liberating, forgiveness is strength. But like every gift that carries immense power, it is also dangerous when placed in the wrong hands or used without wisdom. Forgiveness, if extended to those who do not value it, becomes a double-edged sword. One side restores, the other side destroys. When forgiveness falls into the heart of someone who is truly repentant, it transforms them. It gives them the courage to rise, to change, to live differently than before. It becomes a key that unlocks redemption, a path that leads them back to humanity. A person who has truly seen their wrong and been granted forgiveness will often bow with humility, grateful for another chance, eager to honor the gift they've been given. In such cases, forgiveness fulfills its purpose. It mends, it heals, it uplifts. But what happens when forgiveness is handed out like water to the unthirsty? What happens when the same hand that wounds, lies, betrays, manipulates, keeps receiving forgiveness without consequence? Instead of transformation, entitlement grows. Instead of humility, arrogance takes root. They learn that they can harm and still be embraced. They can deceive and still be welcomed. They can destroy and still be pardoned. Forgiveness in this setting does not save, it enables. It becomes not the key to redemption, but the shield behind which harm continues unchecked. And this is where the empath, the lover, the healer, must learn the sharpness of forgiveness's second edge. Because when forgiveness is extended again and again to someone who has no intention of changing, it does not free the forgiver. It imprisons them. It keeps them bound to cycles of betrayal, bound to relationships that drain the soul, bound to false hope that maybe one day the abuser or betrayer will see the light. In truth, what often happens is the opposite. The betrayer becomes emboldened, the manipulator becomes more skilled, the liar becomes more confident, knowing the well of forgiveness has no bottom. Forgiveness in such circumstances is like giving medicine to someone who spits it out. No healing happens, no growth occurs, but the medicine keeps being poured and the healer becomes weaker for it. Forgiveness is sacred, but without accountability, it becomes misplaced mercy. And misplaced mercy is not love, it is self-destruction. This does not mean forgiveness should be abandoned. No, forgiveness is still necessary, but it must be understood. Forgiveness does not mean tolerance of abuse. Forgiveness does not mean staying in the presence of harm. Forgiveness does not mean offering your heart to someone who has proven time and again they will trample it. Forgiveness, in its purest form, is release. It is the refusal to let bitterness chain you. It is looking at someone and saying, "You no longer have power over my peace." That does not mean you allow them back into the sacred spaces of your life. That does not mean you make yourself available for further harm. Forgiveness can happen from a distance, behind closed doors, in the silence of your spirit. The double edge of forgiveness lies in this. Used with wisdom, it is freedom. Used without discernment, it is bondage. To forgive wisely is to know when to close the door. To forgive wisely is to understand that mercy without responsibility only fuels the fire of destruction. To forgive wisely is to know that even love must have boundaries. Consider the parent who forgives their child over and over for reckless behavior, but never enforces accountability. That child grows up believing the world will always bend, that no consequence will ever fall, that no matter how harmful their choices, someone will always clean up after them. Forgiveness without accountability does not shape character. It erodes it. Or think of the partner who betrays trust repeatedly, only to be forgiven without true change. They do not learn to value the trust they've been given. They learn how to manipulate their way back into comfort. Forgiveness in such hands becomes a tool of control, and yet the forgiver often continues because their heart is pure. They believe in the good of others. They want to see redemption. They want to believe that love can conquer all, but love without wisdom is not love, it is blindness. And forgiveness without discernment is not healing, it is harm disguised as grace. The truth is, forgiveness is sacred enough to be protected. It is not cheap. It is not to be thrown carelessly at those who do not care to change. Forgiveness is a jewel a divine act, and like all sacred things, it must be handled with reverence. To give it to one who treats it as nothing is to diminish its value, to let it be trampled in the dust. But when forgiveness is offered wisely, when it is given to those who truly see its weight, it becomes the most powerful force for change in existence. It softens hearts that seemed unbreakable. It rebuilds bridges long thought destroyed. It restores dignity. It creates hope. It says, I see who you are beyond what you did. In such cases, forgiveness shines as the very breath of God. The challenge for every tender soul, every empath, every forgiver is to discern which side of the sword they are wielding. Are you forgiving to heal, or are you forgiving to avoid confrontation? Are you forgiving to release bitterness, or are you forgiving to hold on to someone who has already shown they do not value you? Are you forgiving to empower, or are you forgiving to enable? These questions matter because the cost of forgiveness given without wisdom is high. It is your peace. It is your dignity. It is your soul's light. And no one, no matter how charming, no matter how familiar, no matter how close, is worth the dimming of your light. Forgive, yes, but forgive with clarity. Forgive with strength. Forgive with wisdom. Because forgiveness is a gift. And like all gifts of power, it must be placed in the hands of those who will not squander it. There comes a moment in every empath's life when the veil is torn, when the illusions that once cloaked the truth can no longer stand. For years, they gave. For years, they forgave. For years, they excused behavior, explained away betrayals, justified wounds as accidents of love or flaws of human weakness. They carried the weight of others' brokenness as if it were their own. They told themselves that patience was noble, that sacrifice was holy, that tolerance was the highest form of love. But the awakening moment arrives like lightning on a dark horizon. It cannot be ignored, it cannot be softened, it cannot be undone. This moment is not born out of sudden anger, but out of accumulated truth. It is the day when the empath looks at the people around them and realizes the patterns have never changed. It is the instant when they recognize that the apologies they once clung to were empty. The promises made were only words, and the love offered in return was not love at all, but dependency, manipulation, or convenience. The awakening moment comes when the scales fall from their eyes and they see the raw truth of who stands before them. And that moment is both painful and liberating. Painful because it feels like the breaking of a sacred trust. The empath, who once believed that goodness could be coaxed from anyone with enough love, must face the reality that some people do not want to change. Some are content to drain, to take, to manipulate, to mask themselves in charm while hiding intentions of selfishness. The pain is sharp because the empath realizes they have been living in hope while standing in deception. They realize they loved a mask, trusted a mask, forgave a mask. But in the same breath, this awakening is liberating. For the first time, the empath sees clearly. They no longer confuse patience with enabling. They no longer confuse forgiveness with surrender. They no longer confuse loyalty with self-betrayal. The awakening moment is the reclaiming of vision, the rising of clarity, the fierce declaration of, I see you as you are, and I will not pretend otherwise. It is not that the empath stops loving. They will always love deeply. It is not that they become cold. They will always feel fully. But what changes is their understanding of worth. In that moment, they awaken to the truth that their heart is not a playground for dishonesty. Their compassion is not a discount store for manipulation. Their soul is not a dumping ground for broken promises. They awaken to the truth that they are not only givers of love, they are deserving of love. The awakening moment reshapes everything. The same words they once accepted with relief now sound hollow. The same gestures they once considered affectionate now feel rehearsed. The same cycles they once endured now feel unbearable. The empath begins to see patterns like threads woven into a fabric they can no longer ignore. They see that the lies always come before the apologies. The apologies always come before the repetition, and the repetition always comes before the breaking of their spirit. And they know deep in their bones that this cycle must end. In this awakening, the empath discovers strength they never knew they had. The same heart that once gave endlessly now beats with resolve. The same patience that once tolerated disrespect now transforms into boundaries. The same silence that once endured pain now becomes a silence of separation, of distance, of reclamation. They realize that walking away does not mean they have failed to love. It means they have finally learned to love themselves. The world around them may not understand this shift. Those who benefited from their endless forgiveness may protest, may accuse, may beg, may even try to guilt them back into submission. They may call the empath selfish, cold, ungrateful. But the empath no longer bows to those words. For in their awakening, they recognize manipulation for what it is. They recognize projection for what it is. And they know that standing tall in their truth is not cruelty, it is survival. This moment of awakening is also one of grief. The empath must mourn the years they lost to illusions, the love they gave without reciprocity, the faith they placed in unworthy hands. They must grieve not only for what was done to them, but for what they allowed unknowingly by believing in people who never intended to rise. Grief is part of the awakening. Tears will fall, nights will feel heavy, silence will press like stone. But through the grief, strength is born. Through the mourning, wisdom takes root. And wisdom changes the way the empath loves going forward. They do not stop giving, but they give with discernment. They do not stop forgiving, but they forgive without returning to the fire. They do not stop loving, but they love with boundaries that protect their soul. They awaken to the truth that love is not meant to destroy them. Forgiveness is not meant to imprison them. Compassion is not meant to be exploited. Love in its purest form must flow both ways. The awakening moment is the day the empath learns to stand in the fullness of their own light, no longer dimming themselves to comfort others, no longer silencing their intuition to preserve false peace, no longer sacrificing their dignity to keep a seat at someone else's table. They awaken to the power of building their own table, creating their own peace, and walking in their own dignity. And once that awakening happens, there is no turning back. Every mask around them begins to fall. People who thrived on their forgiveness cannot hide behind excuses anymore. People who relied on their silence cannot escape the weight of accountability. The truth of who people are, selfish or sincere, manipulative or genuine, comes into sharp focus. The empath sees it all, and though it hurts, it also heals. Because truth, no matter how heavy, is always lighter than illusion. The awakening moment is not just a turning point, it is a rebirth. It is the day the empath chooses themselves. It is the day they declare their worth. It is the day they stop existing as an endless well for others and begin to drink from their own cup. And from that day forward, they walk differently. Their step is steadier, their eyes clearer, their heart wiser. They still carry compassion, but it is no longer a chain. It is a crown. There comes a time when the soul realizes that love without boundaries is not love at all. It is surrender, it is erosion, it is self-betrayal disguised as kindness. The empath knows this truth deeply, though it often comes after years of giving too much, forgiving too quickly, and holding on too long. Boundaries are not walls that block love, they are the sacred gates that protect it. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity. They are the lines drawn in love to say, "Here I stand whole, and I will not allow you to diminish me." For too long, many have confused sacrifice with love. They have mistaken silence for loyalty, mistaken tolerance for strength. But the reality is this: without boundaries, love is unbalanced. Without boundaries, relationships tilt into exploitation, into manipulation, into spaces where one person gives everything and the other takes without end. Boundaries are sacred because they are the guardians of dignity. They are the protectors of peace. They are the declarations that the heart is valuable, the soul is worthy, and the self is not disposable. Think of a garden with no fence. The flowers bloom, the fruit ripens, but without a boundary, anything can trample in. Strangers can pluck what they did not plant. Thieves can steal the fruit, and careless feet can crush the blossoms. But when a boundary is built, not too high to block the sun, not too harsh to suffocate the soil, but strong enough to say, "This garden is cared for," the beauty of the garden thrives. Boundaries are not built to keep love out. They are built to keep love pure, safe, and nurturing. For the empath, boundaries often feel unnatural at first. They are used to bending, used to softening, used to stretching themselves beyond measure so others might feel whole. They think to say no is unkind, to demand respect is selfish, to walk away is betrayal. But this is the lie they have been taught by those who benefited from their lack of boundaries. The truth is, the most sacred act of love one can offer to themselves and to others is the establishment of boundaries. Because when there are no boundaries, there is no honesty. There is only pretense, only imbalance, only the slow decay of what love was meant to be. Boundaries declare, "I will not allow you to speak to me in ways that dishonor me." They declare, "I will not remain in spaces where my soul is diminished." They declare, "I love you, but I love myself too, and if I must choose, I will not sacrifice my peace for your chaos." These statements are not walls of rejection, but pillars of respect. Without them, love cannot breathe. Without them, compassion suffocates under the weight of abuse. There is a sacredness in understanding that boundaries are not the end of love, but the beginning of true love. Because true love does not demand you to shrink. True love does not ask you to silence your voice, erase your needs, or carry weights that were never yours to carry. True love flourishes when both hearts are seen, when both souls are honored, when both spirits have space to grow. Boundaries create that space. Boundaries make room for honesty, for accountability, for mutual care, and yet many resist boundaries. Why? Because boundaries expose truth. They reveal who respects you and who only wants to use you. They reveal who values your soul and who values only your service. They reveal who sees you as a person and who sees you as a resource. This is why, when boundaries are first drawn, the world around the empath often shakes. Those who were comfortable taking without giving will cry out, will resist, will accuse. They will say the empath has changed, grown cold, become cruel. But the truth is, boundaries do not change your heart. They reveal theirs. Imagine a river without banks. The water spills everywhere, flooding land, drowning crops, destroying homes. But when the river has strong banks, the water flows with power, nourishing everything in its path. The river is not less water because it has boundaries. It is more powerful, more purposeful, more life-giving. So it is with love. Without boundaries, it spills recklessly. With boundaries, it becomes a force of healing, of creation, of transformation. The empath's journey into boundaries is not easy. At first, guilt rises like a storm. They feel they are betraying those they care for. They wonder if saying enough makes them unkind. But slowly, they learn that guilt is not the voice of truth. It is the echo of conditioning. They were taught to put others first, to make themselves small, to believe their worth was tied to how much they could endure. Boundaries break that conditioning. Boundaries rewrite the story. Boundaries say, my worth is not measured by how much pain I can tolerate. My worth is not measured by how much I can give away. My worth is inherent, and I will not live as though it were negotiable. And once the empath learns to honor boundaries, something extraordinary happens. Their relationships change. Those who never intended to honor them fall away. Those who loved them only for their tolerance fade into the background. But those who truly value them remain. And those who come after meet a stronger, wiser, more radiant soul. Boundaries do not isolate the empath. They attract those who are capable of true love, because only those who respect themselves can respect another. Only those who live with honesty can honor the honesty of another. Boundaries are sacred because they protect not only the soul of the empath, but also the integrity of love itself. Without boundaries, love becomes diluted, distorted, a performance rather than a truth. With boundaries, love becomes a fire, warm, powerful, life-giving, but never to be mishandled. Boundaries do not make love smaller. They make love stronger. They make it honest. They make it sacred. The empath who learns this truth is never the same again. They no longer confuse self-sacrifice with virtue. They no longer allow others to dictate their worth. They no longer apologize for protecting their heart. They understand now that to love themselves fiercely is not selfish, it is necessary. It is the foundation on which every other love must be built. There is a moment in life when truth refuses to be hidden any longer. For the empath, that moment often arrives like a storm after years of quiet skies. They have loved with patience, they have forgiven with grace, they have endured with hope. But when the empath awakens, when they set their boundaries and refuse to give endless chances to those who have not earned them, something powerful happens. The masks begin to fall. Every mask that once hid lies behind a smile. Every disguise that once cloaked manipulation in charm. Every costume that once pretended love where there was only control, it all crumbles in the light of truth. Masks are fragile things. They rely on the darkness of ignorance, on the blindness of those willing to look away, on the silence of those too kind to call them out. But when the empath decides to stop forgiving without change, when they withdraw their silence and stand in their clarity, the mask can no longer hold. The manipulator who once cloaked themselves in sweet words is revealed for what they are. The friend who claimed loyalty but thrived on betrayal is exposed. The lover who promised devotion but lived in deceit finds nowhere left to hide. The empath has long been the stage on which these masks performed. Because of their compassion, they believed the act. Because of their tenderness, they accepted the role others played. Because of their hope, they gave encore after encore to characters who had no intention of showing their real selves. But now, the play is over. The curtain falls. The masks slip. And truth stands bare in the middle of the room. This unmasking is not gentle. It is not easy. It shakes relationships to their core. Those who wore the mask will fight to keep them intact. They will beg, they will blame, they will spin new illusions, all in an effort to keep the empath blind. But the empath, once awakened, cannot be fooled again. They see through the disguise, they hear the falseness in the tone, they recognize the pattern in the excuses. The spell is broken, and the mask is nothing but paper in the rain. The fall of every mask is a revelation, but it is also a grief, because the empath must accept that the person they thought they loved, the friend they thought they trusted, the leader they thought they admired, was not real, or at least not whole. They were interacting with a performance, not a truth. To face this is painful, like mourning a death that never had a body. It is the death of illusions, the burial of false hope, and yet it is necessary, because only when the masks fall can the empath see clearly, and only in seeing clearly can they choose freedom. The world is full of masks. Some are worn out of fear, some out of survival, but many are worn out of deceit. These masks pretend kindness while hiding cruelty. They pretend loyalty while hiding betrayal. They pretend love while hiding selfishness. For a time, they work. They work because people want to believe in the good. They work because empaths especially are wired to see potential, to believe that love can transform even the hardest heart. But when the empath stops extending unearned forgiveness, the disguise cannot hold. It is like holding a candle to paper. The truth burns through, and when the masks fall, something else happens. The empath sees not only others, but themselves more clearly. They see how long they ignored the warnings, how many times they silenced their intuition, how often they traded their peace for the hope of change. They see their own reflection, and though it stings, it strengthens them, because in seeing how they were deceived, they vow never to be deceived again. In realizing the power of illusion, they claim the power of truth. The fall of every mask is also a gift, though it does not feel like one in the beginning. It feels like loss, betrayal, devastation. But over time, the empath begins to recognize that truth, even when painful, is a form of freedom. It frees them from wasting years on falsehoods. It frees them from giving to those who only take. It frees them from cycles that drain and destroy. The fall of masks may break the heart, but it saves the soul. And the beauty of this moment is that the empath, once free of illusions, learns to walk with sharper eyes and stronger boundaries. They learn to value authenticity over appearances, consistency over charm, actions over words. They no longer crave empty apologies. They demand changed behavior. They no longer cling to potential. They honor reality. They no longer excuse cruelty as weakness. They recognize cruelty for what it is. With this clarity, they begin to attract new energy, new people, new love, people who come not with masks, but with truth, even if imperfect, even if flawed. The fall of every mask reveals not only deception, but also resilience. For every mask that crumbles, the empath grows stronger. For every illusion that dissolves, the empath grows wiser. For every falsehood exposed, the empath grows freer. What once felt like loss becomes gain. What once felt like ruin becomes rebirth. And though the world may still try to fool them, the empath now carries within them a vision that pierces disguise. Masks cannot survive in the light of boundaries, in the presence of awakened vision. They fall, and when they fall, the truth stands. The truth may hurt, but the truth also heals. The truth may cut, but the truth also cleanses. And in the end, the truth will always outlast the mask. When the empath finally sees this, they no longer fear the fall of masks. They welcome it. They welcome truth however it arrives. They welcome authenticity however raw it feels, because the empath has learned that love without truth is not love at all. Connection without honesty is not connection. Forgiveness without accountability is not healing. They have learned that it is better to face a painful truth than to live a beautiful lie. And once they know this, every mask loses its power. There is a language more powerful than words, a force stronger than confrontation, a decision more final than shouting at the top of your lungs. That language is silence, and that force is distance. For the empath, who has spent years explaining, justifying, forgiving, and pleading to be understood, silence and distance become the ultimate revolution. They are not weapons of cruelty, but instruments of clarity. They do not wound, they reveal. The empath often begins their journey believing that if they can just explain themselves better, if they can just love harder, if they can just give one more chance, then surely change will come. They speak with patience. They pour out words filled with compassion. They exhaust themselves trying to make others understand their pain. But time and again, their words fall on deaf ears. Their kindness is mistaken for weakness, and their forgiveness becomes a revolving door through which betrayal walks freely. And then, after enough cycles of disappointment, the empath discovers something remarkable. Silence speaks louder than any plea, and distance says what words never could. Silence is not empty. Silence is full. It is full of dignity, full of strength, full of boundaries. It is the declaration that says, I will not waste one more breath explaining to someone who has already chosen not to listen. It is the refusal to engage in arguments that go nowhere, to defend oneself to those who twist the truth, to beg for decency from those who cannot offer it. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the realization that energy is sacred, that peace is priceless, and that words spent on the unwilling are words wasted. Distance is silence's companion. To step back, to walk away, to remove yourself from the reach of someone's chaos. This is not abandonment, it is preservation. It is the decision to guard your soul from further harm, to create space where healing can begin, to remind yourself that peace is not found in proximity to pain, but in separation from it. Distance says, I choose myself. Distance says, I no longer give you access to destroy me. Distance is not punishment, it is freedom. And when silence and distance are chosen, masks collapse faster than any confrontation could force, because those who depended on the empath's endless explanations no longer have them to manipulate. Those who thrived on the empath's constant forgiveness no longer have it to shield them. Those who feasted on the empath's presence no longer have it to consume. Without access, their power fades. Without the empath's participation, their games crumble. Silence and distance turn the stage lights off, leaving only the actor standing in the dark with no one left to fool. For the empath, embracing silence and distance is often terrifying at first. They have been conditioned to believe that love means staying, that loyalty means enduring, that forgiveness means repeating. To fall silent feels unnatural. To step away feels cruel. But in truth, it is the highest form of self-respect. It is the moment the empath stops trying to fix what they did not break, stops carrying burdens that were never theirs to hold, stops bleeding themselves dry to water the deserts of others. It is the moment they understand that walking away is not the end of love. It is the beginning of freedom. The beauty of silence and distance is that they shift the focus. The empath, who once spent endless time analyzing the behavior of others, finally has space to hear their own voice again. In the quiet, they rediscover their strength. In the stillness, they reclaim their intuition. In the space created by distance, they heal wounds that words could never mend. Silence is the soil in which clarity grows. Distance is the horizon where new beginnings rise. It must be said, silence and distance are not about revenge. They are not about punishing the other person or hoping they feel abandoned. No, silence and distance are not born from hatred, but from necessity. They are about choosing peace over chaos, dignity over humiliation, self-preservation over destruction. They are about reclaiming the life the empath nearly lost in the constant noise of defending, forgiving, and enduring. Those who lose access to the empath because of silence and distance will reveal themselves quickly. Some will rage, demanding explanations they are no longer owed. Some will manipulate, trying to guilt the empath back into their web. Some will vanish, proving they were only there for what they could take. And a rare few may awaken, realizing the depth of what they lost when the empath finally walked away. But regardless of how others respond, the empath is free. Free from the cycle, free from the noise, free from the endless exhaustion of giving without receiving. Silence and distance also create something extraordinary. They give the empath back to themselves. For so long, their identity was tied to saving others, soothing others, holding others. But in silence, they learn to soothe themselves. In distance, they learn to hold themselves. They discover hobbies, dreams, passions, joys that were buried under the weight of constant sacrifice. They laugh again, not because someone gave them permission, but because they remembered they deserve joy. They find peace, not because someone else created it, but because they created it for themselves. And when they re-emerge from the cocoon of silence and distance, they are not the same. They are stronger, wiser, calmer. They no longer explain themselves to those committed to misunderstanding. They no longer chase those who walk away. They no longer confuse endless chances with endless love. Instead, they speak sparingly but powerfully. They give sparingly but intentionally. They love sparingly but authentically. Silence taught them the value of words. Distance taught them the value of presence. The power of silence and distance is this: it does not just change relationships, it transforms the empath. It shifts them from a place of dependence to a place of independence, from vulnerability without protection to strength with wisdom. It allows them to move forward with clarity, no longer shackled by cycles of pain, but guided by peace. And once they know this power, once they taste the freedom of silence and distance, they carry it with them forever. The rebirth of the empath does not happen in a single moment. It does not arrive with fanfare, nor does it announce itself with fireworks. It comes quietly, after the storms have raged, after the tears have been shed, after the silence has stretched long enough to heal what was once broken. The rebirth begins the day the empath realizes that survival is no longer enough.